everybody. I'm Linda Clark. I'm the editor of First Time Buyer magazine, which you probably realise are putting on this show today. And I thank you all for taking the time out to come along. And I do hope you're enjoying it and getting a lot of information from the stands that are obviously next door. Today we are really lucky to have the lovely Jonnie Irwin with us, which I think many of you will recognise from TV's Escape to the Country and A Place in the Sun. So Jonnie's used to all this, I'm afraid I'm not. But I think Jonnie, we'd like to sort of start off with a little bit about how you actually got to do all these wonderful things like TV, etc.
Sure. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for coming along. Just a quick note, with my TV head on, we're obviously filming this. We'll be asking some of you questions, so if anybody doesn't want to be on film, raise your hand and someone will come up and put a bag over your head. We're also, I think there's a draw at the end of this.
There is.
A prize draw. So if you're going to fall asleep, we'll wake you up for that at least. I'm kind of property through and through, to be honest with you. My dad was a property developer. I remember some of my first memories were running around a building site, jumping in and out of the footings, health and safety nightmare. And then I went to university. I wanted to be an actor or a rugby player. I wasn't big enough or probably talented enough for either of those. So I decided I wanted to get a job at the end of my uni. So I studied estate management, which is the degree that you need in order to be a surveyor. So I graduated there and then got a job as a surveyor with a firm called Christie & Co, buying and selling business-based properties like hotels, shops, restaurants and that. And then I transferred to a big worldwide firm called Collier's. It was there that I'd received a call from a mate saying, look, there's a TV show and they're after someone with property experience. So I rang them up. I found out they were already down to the last 5 or 6 candidates, but I knew they wouldn't be making a decision that close to Christmas. So I got my mum's camcorder out, went round the local shopping centre in Leicester, and made a tape, shipped it in, and then was invited round for a screen test and got the job. And that was for A Place in the Sun, Home or Away, some 17 years ago. Jesus, yeah, 17 years ago. And then I've been doing property shows for the BBC and Channel 4 and Sky pretty much ever since. I've still kept my hand in property. I do some consultancy. And in later years, I've become involved in things that I'm just genuinely passionate about. And I know the property market wouldn't move in a way it moves without the first-time buyers. You guys are so important. And you need help. That's what today is all about. So I'm a big supporter of Linda at First Time Buyer magazine and everything to do with first-time buyers, with shared ownership and housing associations getting more and more involved in this sector. So it's a big passion of mine, and I can see it's obviously it's needed this today. Places like this venue, your magazine, Linda, they're essential. They're the only guides out there because you can't turn to mum and dad and ask them about what it's like to buy a shared ownership because they don't know. They bought their houses for $5,000. These days, $5,000 will get you a share of a house, but there's so many people out there that don't even know about shared ownership. So it's an interesting time and it's a growing market, and all that we need to do is educate people and give them information. That's what today's all about.
So, obviously everybody here is presumably looking for their first home. Tell us about how your first step on the property ladder, what happened? How did you actually make that move?
Well, I was lucky enough to be living in a city and at a time, and with a job, those 3 things came together to make me able to buy a traditional house with a mortgage. So I was living in Birmingham, so cheaper than the southeast, and I bought my first house for £82,000. I was living with a girlfriend at the time, so we had 2 incomes. We were dinkies, double income, no kids. And the property market, I mean, my old man told me to not buy. He said, look, the property market's already gone up. Do not buy, do not buy. My lack of respect for that man made me buy. And, I mean, this is how, the prices had gone up. But I sold that house 2 years later for 160 odd grand. It was, it's doubled in value. And that was okay, I put a new kitchen in and tidied the house up, but I'll be the first to admit, I wasn't a property developer. The market looked after that, no one else. And and that's how it came about. But, then we only needed a few £1,000s between us to get a mortgage, but the interest rate was just under 7%. So when I look at the interest rates now, yes, it's very, very difficult for you guys, but the interest rates are still so low. I was lucky to go straight into a traditional way of purchase, I suppose, and it was very much a starter home. It wasn't, it wasn't in an area of Birmingham that I wanted to live in, particularly, and it wasn't in the style of house that I aspired to live in, but I knew I wanted to get on the ladder as quick as possible. So that's what I did, and it stood me in good stead. But obviously, not all of us are as lucky as me.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because I'm much, much older than anybody else in this room, I'm sure. And I remember interest rates being 16%, which is an absolute...
And if you had a business at that time, you had to pay 2% above the base rate.
Yeah.
So, my old man talks about him paying 17, 18%.
Yeah, it's
and
terrifying.
at any moment, the bank can just whisk it from underneath your feet. But I will not be the person that says to people, you don't know, interest rates are low, you should go for it. Because whilst you guys are faced with very low interest rates, I know it doesn't feel like it, but you really, really are, you're faced with high property values and inflation at an exorbitant rate. So there's different challenges everywhere you look, actually.
So, obviously the people that you see on the shows that you do, they have probably already bought. They're not always first-time buyers, are they? But
No.
And they're buying probably a second home, either in the sun or in the country or wherever they want to be. But what do you feel is the most important thing about owning your first home? I mean, I know how I feel, but what do you think? Everybody in this room, I'm sure, hasn't experienced that yet because they don't own anything. But how, do you think it's worth it? Is owning your own home a good thing?
Yeah, for me, and I was reminded about this recently, it's security. I got on that ladder quite early, in my early 20s. Prior to that, I'd been a renter. I'd rented off mates. I was a student. I wasn't in the rental market long enough to feel the insecurity that a lot of renters feel these days. And there is security in regards to the length of lease and the Housing Act and all that that's on your side. And as a tenant, you've got more rights now than you ever have done. But I had to rent for the last year and a half. I've just bought a house again. I had to move up north, and I suddenly became a renter again. And that was fine. I missed not living in my own house. I missed not being able to put up shelves badly. I missed not being able to paint a room without permission and things like that. But then suddenly, one day, the property had gone up so much, the owners just said, right, okay, we want to sell at the end of the year. I had a family of 5 living in a house. That's not, up until recently, I was moving house in the back of a Golf. Suddenly I had 5 people's stuff to move and the people, and it's a big thing. It really pulled the rug from underneath my feet. So I moved to another house, and there was no choice. The rental market was on fire. I was having to pay exorbitant rent on a property that I didn't want, and then I moved to a new house which I didn't like, and then the same thing happened. The owner wanted to sell the property. And so I really empathise with anybody in rented property, because that's the undercurrent. You've got this lack of security, but then in a more positive note, you can't do anything to the property. It's not yours. It's not your home. And so I completely get the aspiration of wanting to own your own home. You know, you can look at Germany and they're a nation of renters, but that's in their psyche. The law in Germany is different anyway. It's massively on the side of the renters, and they have 3-year leases. We don't have 3-year leases. So there's a lack of security that I can see that you want to buy yourself out of. So I completely empathise with you, and I'm behind you 100% by the fact that you want to buy a property. You want to put a line in the sand and say, that's mine. Everything behind here is mine, and I'm in control of it, not anybody else.
It's so true, because that feeling of putting your key in the door for the first time is unbelievable, because it is the biggest thing you'll ever buy. But those keys mean more than anything else you'll ever feel. It's incredible.
And that never goes away,
No.
no matter what house you buy, no matter how far up the ladder you are. It is pure excitement, pure joy. And the sacrifices that you've had to make, and it's always sacrifices, probably more so now than ever, believe me, I believe they're worth it. They're totally worth it. But sacrifices you will have to make.
100%. And you know, I know that saving for a deposit is obviously a big stumbling block, because, you know, with things like rent, that you haven't got a lot left over at the end of the month to save.
Especially in the southeast as well. Like the cost of living. You know, I've now relocated to the northeast, but I've spent the last few days in London, and you can't leave the house without spending 20, 30 quid. It's just a fact of life. It's an expensive place. You jump on a bus, you jump on a tube, you're getting a sandwich, you're getting a coffee. You just spend money. I was just flicking notes, and I'd forgotten about that. And between that with the southeast rents, which are like mortgages, bigger than mortgage payments. The cost of living down here is high. I make no bones about that, and you all know that as much as me. So it's harder to save. So, but you've got, if you listen to your mum and dad, they will say, we didn't have Netflix, we didn't go on foreign holidays, we didn't have £1,000 iPhones, we didn't have a car or a motorbike or whatever. We didn't do that, we just saved. But the trouble is, that stuff wasn't available. You know, you didn't have computers, you didn't have Netflix. Everyone else is doing it. But those sacrifices you will have to make. You can't have your cake and eat it, because property is just so expensive now. But there are ways and means to do it. Like, there's an age group here I can see. It's a fairly common age group, and it's people. There's tricks to save money. I mean, I'm no Martin Lewis, but you know, if you go for Netflix, get an account which you can share the code with 2 people. So that, you know, that £10 a month becomes £3 a month. Don't go with that foreign holiday, because that foreign holiday over 2-3 years is a couple of £1,000 probably. Don't every other day have a coffee, but every little thing there's been government schemes recently whereby you have tax-free savings. Just start dripping things in. Just start little compromises. And those little compromises, if you see that little nest egg building, you'll be encouraged to make more compromises. And you will have to make them. It'll be brutal, but what you don't want to do is finally get to afford the house and then not be able to afford to do anything. Get used to living on a bit of a shoestring, because you will need to do that once you own.
That's so true. And I think during the pandemic, I don't know how everybody was here, but we couldn't go out and spend money. And I'm sure that a lot of people did find their savings did increase.
Yes and no. Don't forget, there's a lot of companies out there that had their best possible year. Red Bull, for example, had the most turnover and the most profit they've ever had in the pandemic. I thought Red Bull was a drink you drank through your eyes in a nightclub, but we had more time at home to spend money on our phones. So the pandemic, it stopped us going on holiday, but we made ourselves feel better by buying other things. I'm a sucker for it. I spend far too much on my phone. Hence I got hacked last night.
Yes, I'm afraid that's the thing. It's a very addictive thing, phone, isn't it? You can't really live without it. And
without sounding like an old duffer, you've got to remove the temptation. And if you're a spender, the first trick is to find out if you are a spender, and admit it, and delete some apps that you're constantly spending money on. I for some reason, I try not to use taxis at all, try and walk everywhere, and that's because I'm a fitness freak. But I've done that since being here, and I've saved probably about £9 a day in tube fares and the odd cab as well. It's just these little things that you'd probably go out and just think nothing of spending because it's contactless. You know, we don't have paper anymore. Stop these habits. It'll pay you back. By the end of the year, a few habits will probably give you £1,000 or £2,000, and that's a massive amount towards your deposit.
Absolutely. So just a show of hands, who's interested here in shared ownership, which is the part buy, part rent scheme that a lot of people... So, yeah, some of you, because
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Show of hands again. Who doesn't know anything about shared ownership? Right. So it's a product that is there to allow people onto that first rung. It's not for everyone, because living in the UK with people like me on the TV showing people houses, we are ingrained to want to buy a traditional house. We are ingrained to, I don't want to share it with anybody. That sounds like a scam. I want to own my own house. But don't forget, you still share that house, but you share it with a mortgage company. You don't own that own house. So it's not that different to shared ownership, because you're buying a mortgage. If you've got a 10% deposit, lucky you, 90% of that house is owned by the bank. They've got first charge on it. So unless you're buying a house outright with cash, you don't own it. You have control of it, but do give shared ownership a thought. Speak to an expert here today. I met a guy at a couple of weeks ago, and he bought a shared ownership property with 10 or 15%, and he did this thing called staircasing. And we're going to get onto that, or should I kind of get into it now?
No, do.
He did this thing called staircasing. So he bought 15%, and a mortgage for, maybe 40% or whatever it was, and paid rent on the remainder. And he did this thing called staircasing. So as the years went by, he saved a bit more money and bought more shares in the property, and that put down the rent. He eventually, and not many people get all the way to 100, he got to 100%, owned the property, sold it on the open market as a regular property, and he now lives in a regular house elsewhere, bought it with a normal mortgage. It's possible, but it starts making you more responsible, because suddenly you've got bills, you've got a house, and you've got the desire to I fancy buying that side cabinet, I fancy buying that table and chairs, and you start buying stuff that you'll take with you. You start buying stuff with meaning and purpose and value, rather than just thinking, I never better afford a house, might as well go for takeaway again. But it's a mindset, owning a property, and it's a massive responsibility, don't get me wrong, but it's a mindset when you own a property. And once you start, you'll want to own more of the property and more of the property, and nest as you go on.
Absolutely. So true. So with shared ownership, you basically buy a portion and the housing association owns the other bit. So you pay a subsidised rent on the bit you don't own, and you have a mortgage on the bit you do. And so the government have just recently changed this. I don't know if you know about this, Jonnie, but you can now, instead of buying a minimum of 25% to start with, you can now buy 10%. And because of that, obviously your deposit is going to be super duper low. So you can actually go out there now and talk to some of those guys, and you'll find the deposit will be £5,000-6,000.
That's incredible. That really is incredible. And shared ownership has come a long way. My sister bought a shared ownership 25 years ago, and I pleaded with her not to. And these were the days when she had to give She couldn't sell it. She couldn't sell her share on the open market. She had to give first refusal to the housing association. If she wanted to buy more, she had to get it revalued, and that cost money. That's all changed now, and you can get a solicitor to double check that for you. Nowadays, if you want to buy more, you don't have to pay for the RICS valuation. You just pay more for it, and that's the easier and cheaper way to staircase and to get more equity in the property. All you're trying to do is pay off the debt rather than pay the rent. Now, if you earn 10% of it, you earn some of that property. That's great. But it's great also to earn more and more and more. You get your rent down and you get more responsibility, but you also get exposure to the market. I mean, who knows where this is going to stop, but the first-time buyer market seems to be going nowhere but up.
Yeah.
And so in 5 years' time, you won't be millionaires, but you'll probably get more than you paid for your property and more than you paid for your share. And that's what we're aiming for. I'm not this evangelical bloke that tries to turn people into property developers and investors. I just want to help people get on the ladder to have their own home and to get out of the rental market. And shared ownership is a great first step for anybody with a low deposit.
100%. There's also the Help to Buy scheme, although that is coming to
an end,
close. So if you were thinking of doing the other government scheme, Help to Buy.
Is there much time left for that?
No, it ends April next year, so you'd have to get in fairly fast.
Yeah, but it's another great scheme, and don't get me on the government, because I think they're useless in a lot of things. But there is some help out there, and use that help. There is tax-free savings out there. Use that. There's so much. There's quite a lot of help out there that people in your position don't know about. And I remember, because I work in TV, I work with a lot of young people. And there's a sound man, he was saving up, and he was cribbed up to the eyeballs. He knew more about it than I did, and he was saving in this bank account because that was tax-free, the Help to Buy saver and all that sort of, and there was an ISA here and an ISA there. And he was building up, and he rang me 2 weeks ago, and he's just completed on his first house.
Whoa.
A complete wreck, but he's so excited.
Yeah.
But you know what? He saved hard for 2 years. You know, it doesn't come easy. No, I'm not saying it comes easy, but he saved hard for 2 years, and he's got himself a traditional house in Wales.
That's great.
I mean, another disadvantage, obviously.
So, do you want to see if anybody wants to ask a question, Jonnie?
Yeah, why not? Here we go. Straight up. See, that's what I like to see. Hold on.
Yeah, you were saying Help to Buy was coming to a close. Is that the equity loan, or is that sort of the other ones as well? And also, can you currently get shared ownership and Help to Buy scheme together?
Good question. Thank God Linda's here.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't really hear.
So the Help to Buy, can you get Help to Buy with shared ownership together?
Oh, no. No.
It's one or t'other, isn't it?
Yeah,
And
they're completely different schemes.
What was the other question?
Oh, what Help to Buy scheme? What did you mean by that? Do you mean the equity loan, or
The help to Buy equity loan, where the government will actually loan you 40% of the property value. So you have to buy a brand new build. You can't buy a second-hand home. It has to be a new build, only up to the value of 600,000. And in London, you get 40% equity loan, which you have interest free for 5 years. And then after that, you start to pay interest. Now, you have to pay that loan back, which I think my personal feeling about this is 5 years passes in a flash. We all know, very quick. And then suddenly you get the interest. And then, of course, you do have to pay that loan back. And it's not what you actually borrowed. It's what the house or the apartment's valued at as when you want to move on.
So if the house has gone up or the apartment has gone up in value, you're going to give them their share of what they lent you in that price rise, which, if it goes down in value, I don't think they're going to ask for less money. So,
so you've paid interest, and then you'll probably have to pay more.
Yeah, so it's you know, there's good and bad, isn't there? But you know, I've never been a massive fan of Help to Buy.
No, nor have I particularly. I mean, we feature it in the magazine because we have to. We want to be, you know, the whole point of the magazine is to inform and educate. But I just think that people forget that there's this huge amount of money that's hanging over their head for quite a long time.
Show of hands, is there anybody here that's looking for a traditional house rather than a new build on a scheme, just trying to get on the ladder that way? Right, interesting. So thank you. So there are advantages to and from buying new houses. People like yourself, you probably just want, you know, I've always quite liked Victorian terraces until I've actually done one up. They're built so badly. But you get character, and you also get a different kind of community. You're more likely to get a mixed community around you, which I rather like, with a terraced house or a traditional house rather than something on a development. And there's an element, I think probably more people than less would prefer to buy a house as a second or third property when they're up the ladder. But the advantages of buying as a first house, especially a new build, are the building warranties. Now, as a first-time buyer, you may or may not be particularly au fait with the ownership responsibilities of owning a property. When things go wrong, it's like, Mum, Dad, what do I do with this boiler? Mum, Dad, what do I do? This leak that's coming through. What do I do with a window that seems to be blowing a gale through, and things like that, and the responsibility of what you need to do. With a new build property, there's normally an NHBC guarantee or its equivalent, which for the first I think 4 or 5 years is a warranty. They get someone in straight away if there's any problem at all. And if you buy new, not always, but 9 times out of 10, there'll be a snagging issue. Something will leak, something will go wrong, but you have a guarantee or warranty for the developer to come in and sort that out straight away. The remainder, it's still under warranty, but it works in a slightly different way. But what you've got is essentially, on a brand new, if you bought it brand new, you've got a 10-year warranty giving you peace of mind. If something goes wrong and it's material to the property, the developer or the insurer that the developer takes their policy out with will come into the property and sort it out for you at their cost. That's a huge peace of mind for anybody buying a first-time property. But that warranty moves with the house, not with the owner. So if you're buying a house that looks new, check how old it is. If it's 5 years old, you've got 5 years left of that building warranty. That's a huge peace of mind for big bills. And bills do happen. You know, like there's no such thing as a perfect property. So that's something to bear in mind.
The other thing about new builds is, of course, that we're all getting much more eco and sustainable. So you'll find that in new homes now, things, you know, you won't need to put the heating on, for example, very much, because you're going to get excellent double glazing. You're going to get all this heat pumps that they're putting in, which is a great way to heat properties nowadays. Not like an old home, which is a bit creaky.
Yeah, my energy bill was £600 last month. Suddenly I've put my wife in charge with that, so the windows aren't open and the radiators aren't on. It's quite an incentive for her. But it's there's so many advantages to new build properties and recently built properties. But something else to bear in mind is that if you are buying a new build property off plan, or it's maybe a year old, find, and this is a great tip actually, find another scheme that they have built and go and visit it, especially if it's off plan, and see how it's faring. Now, there's public areas. How is it planted? Does it look tidy? Are they being looked after? Because you might be buying an apartment, and therefore you'll be paying a service charge. Do the lifts still operate? If you are, this is another thing to bear in mind. If you're buying a property that needs a lift, that lift needs servicing. That servicing is in the service charge. So you're automatically paying a larger service charge than maybe a ground floor property. But go to a scheme that the developer has built, and if you can, get talking to a local. How was it when you first moved in? These snagging issues are basically something that goes wrong when the property is brand new. Were the snagging issues sorted out straight away? What's the management company like to deal with? Are repairs done when you want them to be done? And have a look at the property yourself. You don't have to be a surveyor to think that looks a bit. It's 5 years old, and the stonework under the windows looks a bit mouldy. I remember I went to. This is slanderous. I went to Poundbury. Now, Poundbury is a new development, Prince Charles's development. And he developed, his idea was he didn't like modern architecture, and he wanted to build it in the Georgian style. Well, the Georgians used proper materials. He didn't. And I went there, and it looked naff. There was like mouldy sills underneath the windows because he didn't use stone, he used an aggregate of stone. It just looked a bit pony, to be honest with you. And so I implore you to go to a scheme and see how it's aged. The age of a scheme is a big thing because you not buy it and it looks brand spanking new and all lovely. But 5 years down the line, you might want to move on. And someone else will be looking at it thinking, it's a bit of a tatty development. It's not particularly well put together. And also, go on, see the plan and see what else they've got in the pipeline. You might buy one of the first units, but phase 2 of the development might be a load of houses behind you, and you're going to have wagons going past your door for the next 2 years. So do your research, and that's easy for me to say, but it's also easy for you to carry out, and it involves a bit of time and going to properties and spending time there. You know, do the walk to the shop at night. Does it feel safe? Do the walk to the shop. Do the walk to the school. Maybe the nearest train station. Do it at different times of day. What's it like getting on at that station at rush hour? How long are you going to have to wait until you can actually get on a train, or are you going to be sniffing someone's armpit for the next half an hour? So do your research. It's easily done, but it just involves a bit of time. And remember, you can pull out at any time up until exchange. The whole point, and I hate the way we have to buy property in Britain. It's wrong, it's expensive, it's ancient. But the one thing it gives you is time. You say, yes, I want to buy it, and you instruct solicitors. I know people that I've advised not to buy properties because I've found cracks in them and all sorts of stuff. And I had someone saying, I feel like I've got to buy it because I've spent about £700 on solicitors' fees. No, that £700 of solicitors and surveying fees has helped us build a picture of the fact that this house isn't for you. It's £700 well spent rather than a relationship with a mortgage that's probably £200,000. So use this time in the conveyancing to your best in as much that I'm asking you to take time at the property, take time going through the paperwork, and take time at other properties that they've built. Because all this information gives you a real big picture. Because you're not buying a thing. You're buying a relationship. You're buying into responsibility. You're buying into, the average house of property ownership, I think it's something like 7.5, probably gone up a bit, 8 years. You're buying in that. You're getting married again. So think about that. Don't let it put you off, but just go into it with your eyes open and do as much research as possible. You never know, it could be a negotiation point that you might get a bit of money off in the future.
Thank you, Jonnie. Great advice. Have we got any more questions at all before we do this draw?
Hi, my question is it essential to see a mortgage broker before you purchase a property? And can you see them at the point you're just saving, not necessarily ready to buy it, or do you have to be ready to buy before you see them?
That's a great question. I'm so glad you've asked that. Thank you very much. Yes. Yes. The time to see a mortgage broker is now. You're here doing research. Potentially, you should have already seen one, in my opinion. It's the same as these nutters that go abroad on a place in the sun. They get there and they're, oh yeah, where's the money coming from? Oh right, okay, so you're not in a position. You will be taken far more seriously by the developer, the estate agent, the housing association, if you can say, aye, that's my money, that's my borrowing, I'd like to offer that. Oh right, okay, they've got themselves in order. Because you won't be the only person going after the property. You really, really won't. Last time I spoke to a broker, he told me he had about an average 3.5 to 4 purchasers, qualified purchasers, as in they've got their shit together, for each house, for each property, for each first-time buyer property. And shared ownership gets very, very competitive. Very competitive. But more so that's, I'm probably getting a bit beyond myself. You really need to know how much you can afford. You really need to know what the financial landscape looks like for you over the next few years. So the sooner you sit down with a financial advisor or a mortgage broker, the sooner you can find out, A, how much you can afford to pay for something, but it's not just about affording to pay for it. B, how much it's going to cost you every month for the next 5 years. And then you might only have £500 in your bank, but you will then know how much you need to save to and what your outgoings are likely to be. So you'll know your mortgage outgoings, but then you can put onto that, right, there's the rent portion, then there's maybe a service charge, and then there's maybe gas and electric. And you can start shaping what your financial future looks like. And knowledge is power in property. The more you know, the more you can make decisions quickly. And you might be able to stretch yourself as well. Like, I really wanted to spend X, but actually this property looks great. It's right up my street. I'll push myself, because I know I can push myself because I've done my financial calculations. The broker, it's within what the broker said. Oh, okay, I'll go for that. But going back to my previous point, which is the next stage, once you are in that position, you'll be taken so much more seriously by, I used to sell stuff. If people came to me and said, oh yeah, I want to go and look at something, I want to know about them. Am I wasting my time? No one wants to waste their time selling properties. What my favourite thing to do when I was selling hotels, I didn't want to go home and draw up some sales particulars. I'd know my cash buyers. I know the buyers that could perform quickly and were likely to perform quickly and knew what they were talking about. Whilst I drove away from the property after being instructed, I'd ring up illegally, no hands free. I'd ring up these purchasers and say, well, I've just taken this on. It's not on the market yet. Do you want to go and have a look at it? That made my job easy. It made me look great in front of the client. Jesus, he sold it quickly. It made my job easy because I didn't have to draw up the sales particulars. I didn't have to advertise it. And everyone's laughing because it was a quiet deal done quickly. But you can empower the agent to do that kind of deal if they know who you are. Which brings me on to the next stage, because you've got your money sorted, you've got your certificate for your mortgage lender, then you start to hassle the agents. Get in front of them. Don't rely on emails. Get in front of an agent and say, right, this is what I look like. These are my tastes. And if they send you to something to have a look at, if it's not right, tell them why it's not right in a nice way. Thank you so much for sending me to this property. It's not quite right for me because of X and Y. But if it didn't have X and Y, I would love to go for it. So if you've got anything like that coming up, do please let me know. I was hoping to be a bit close to the train station, or I just didn't feel quite secure walking around at night. Let them know. Let them build a picture in their mind of what you're looking for. You'll make their job easy again.
Great. Thank you very, very much. Well, thank you so much, Jonnie, for today.
My pleasure.
It's been great. I hope you've enjoyed it, everybody. It's been fascinating to hear Jonnie's thoughts about the first time buyer market, and I do wish everybody in this room good luck on their journey to find what will hopefully be your dream home.
Yeah, can I interrupt as well? Like, use this time. Like, I've seen a few people with solicitors' bags and stuff like that. The freebie, yeah, get the freebies, but get the contacts. Today, all the information is free. I'm a director of a law firm, and believe me, we're on the clock when you're instructed. So if they're here today, they're experts in their field, but you get free information, and you'll be able to put a face to the name. If you like them, then they're the people you're going to be dealing with. Hi, I met you at the show. Really nice to deal with. Really nice to meet you. I'd like to instruct you. I'd like to keep you in my back pocket for when I do instruct you. You know, the first thing I would ask a purchaser would be, have you got your mortgage sorted? And the next one would be, who's your lawyer? And if they've, sometimes, here's another thing. Don't use family lawyers. Yes, they're trusted friends of the family. Chances are they know nothing about shared ownership and things like that. Use someone that knows what they're talking about, that's done it before. Someone from Probably Today, or find him in the back of First Time Buyer magazine. But use an expert. Don't use a family friend. Your mum and dad don't know anything about this process. They did it too long ago. In the best will in the world, they might lend you some money, but that's the only advice to take from them, because otherwise, all these people do, mum and dad especially, was just to try and talk me out of everything. And if that had happened, I wouldn't be where I am today. So use experts. Not trusted people, trusted experts. That's the thing to take away from today.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Jonnie. I really appreciate you coming. Thank you.
Pleasure. Thank you.
So I think everybody that arrived here today got a raffle ticket. So we are going to draw, because we had some little prizes that we thought you'd all maybe like to get. So, Jonnie, would you like to pull the first one? We might need to get that announcement out there as well.
Okay, so I have got Joseph. It's your lucky day. 141. Have we got Joseph at 141? Joseph,
Hey,
well done,
Joseph,
mate.
Well done. Joseph, you have won a year's worth of Netflix. That'll save you a bit. If you come and see one of the girls after, they'll give you the envelope. Lovely. And we have another Netflix.
Get in, mate.
As well.
That's a good prize, isn't it? Right.
Right, we've got another.
You're interested now, aren't you? You thought you were going to get a dishwasher. 75. Chem, Lem, 75. Oh, yeah.
Yay. Right, well, you also...
You win a month's supply of Bold all-in-one. No, you don't.
You also win a year's worth of Netflix. So, again, if you'd like to see them afterwards, lovely.
How many subscriptions, how many codes do they get? Because I could do with cutting mine down.
Great. Okay, next one.
Great, this isn't it?
Good, isn't it? Like this game.
Right. Amy. 74. Amy.
Amy, yay.
Winner, chicken dinner.
Amy, you have won, it's a Lakeland slow cooker and a recipe book to go with it.
Flippin' heck. Oh, nice one.
So if you see the girls, we've managed to find a bag, so you should be able to carry it home. Yeah, it's cool. I've got a slow cooker. I love it. I really love it. It's so good. Right, and the last prize.
Fingers crossed. I'm gunning for you. You got your St. Patrick's Day jumper on. You could be a Magdalene, couldn't you? 120.
Oh dear, 120.
120. Well done. Well done. Congratulations.
Fantastic. So you have won probably the big prize today, which is the free conveyancing.
Oh, touch.
So
That's
when you
a
get to
massive
buy, you will get free conveyancing, which will save you a tidy sum.
That's amazing. That's a really good prize.
If you also see the ladies afterwards, they'll show. Actually, the people that are giving this are here today. It's Direction Law. They're in the room if you want to go and have a word afterwards as well. Lovely. Thank you all so much. Thank you, Jonnie.
Pleasure.
Thank you. Thank
Pleasure,
you.
pleasure, pleasure.